You're listening to Cosplay Bites, the podcast that takes a closer look at the world of cosplay, conventions, and all the nerdy bits and bytes. Brought to you by the Lightning Palace and proudly sponsored by Anchor. Join me as I discuss a variety of topics and conventions alongside the joy of bringing your favorite characters to life. Alright, what's going on? Here's another episode of Cosplay Bites for you on this happy journey through quarantine. I'm your host, Blue Lightning, and I have Mink back with me.
Hello.
Again for another arousing discussion. How you doing?
I am blessed and highly favored.
Yeah. That's all you can hope to be.
That's right.
Yeah. Those unaware, go through the same song and dance. Cosplay Bites is the podcast all about your cosplay news, updates, stories about conventions, and all that fun stuff. But considering that basically cons are taking the rest of this year off, I'm trying to take this opportunity to dive into other topics that aren't just convention wrap-ups or recaps. Although if I'm able to get that, I'm not going to say no to that. So, before we dive into things, shout out to my fellow patrons over on my Patreon. I have Coralia Jade, Cat Yutka Moonfox, Kendall, Mink the Satyr, Nicole Marie Jean, Noah, Oh My Sophie, and Shaylin. And still on my blog hiatus, but that'll get started up first week of June, so get ready for posts to start coming in again. And with that being said, why don't we do Mink, you told me earlier that you've been sewing all day. What have you been working on?
Well, I am working on another cosplay. I've been slowly whittling away at my 151 Pokemon costumes. And darn it, I'm not going to let a little thing like lockdown keep me from making my timelines. It's interesting because a lot of folks have been expressing similarly. I have also been expressing that without these conventions coming up, it's kind of hard to find your motivation to work on a costume. But
sure,
the reality is that thanks to having a Patreon, I have at least my patrons to work for. So,
right.
So they're like my many bosses. So I want to make sure that I'm producing to keep myself moving forward and not get out of the routine of my usual habits. So I am working on a kind of a project, if I am honest with myself. I'm working on making the Nidorans, not Nidorina, Nidorino, Nido King, Nido Queen. I mean specifically Nidoran male, Nidoran female. I'm going to be doing them back to back. So my goal is to finish Nidoran female, and I'd love to get her photographed in the next day or so.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's something.
Well, I've been sitting on this design since late April, I believe. When I moved to lockdown, I sort of had to start planning a month to 2 months in advance. So right now I'm wrapping up Nidoran female, and then in the next couple of days, I need to plan for the next costume I'm going to work on after I finish Nidoran male, because what's going to need to happen is I'm going to need to design it. Then I'm going to need to figure out what I need materials wise and order that ASAP, with all of the services for non-essential items being on low priority. You have to plan a month in advance, especially with fabrics.
Yeah.
So my goal is to spend the next 30-ish days working on a costume so that by the time I'm finished, the materials for the next costume are already there. So I'm constantly engaged in doing something. I'm not sitting on my hands
You're
waiting
not having
for
a
something
break
arrive.
to break your flow. Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I've certainly lived that life where I was sitting there being like, oh my God, I just want this fabric to come. Oh my God, I just want this fabric to come. Why is this fabric not here?
Yeah.
But this is our new normal for at least a little while. I suspect over the summer, as the state that I live in starts to move into phase 1 and 2 of opening back up, that I'm going to notice that some things are going to ship a little bit quicker than others. But at the same time, I'm not sitting here
Right.
like holding my breath.
Yeah. Yeah. I really haven't been keeping up with how my state's going through their reopening. I feel like they may be in the first phase or so. I don't know, but yeah, it's certainly been something.
Well, it's cosplay in the time of COVID. We have to
Yeah.
figure out how to stay safe while simultaneously figuring out how to navigate our new world.
Right. And sort of a nice segue into the main topic. You said you've been planning out and ordering stuff for your next outfit after the needle rands have been completed. Do you find yourself budgeting?
That's a loaded question. Sort of, yes. I am fortunate that I have a number of patrons who sponsor me on Patreon. But before I had my Patreon, it was far more impactful when I would purchase materials for making costumes. Not to say that, my Patreon covers all of my cosplay expenses. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover all of my expenses. So I am still taking a financial hit every time I make a new costume, but does it offset it? Oh, enormously. The important thing is to just kind of understand ahead of time what you are willing to pay per costume out of pocket and how often you're willing to do that.
Yeah.
So like before I had a sponsorship, I was making maybe like 3 to 5 costumes per year at most. And these costumes were ranging between $100 and $300. So when you do the math, like, I could be clocking it at something like a maximum of $1,500 of personal expense annual, which I was willing to do back in like 2016.
No.
that was the hobby that I did instead of going to bars and drinking,
Right.
or buying the latest and greatest fashion. This was my hobby, and this was the thing that I gave myself money to spend on. But
Sure.
now, as I move into 2020, I'm making a costume a month, and that expense could be as little as $200 and as much as $1,000.
Depending on all the intricacies of the design and what you feel would be best to help represent your, I guess, vision of the cosplay come to life, so to speak, right?
Yes, and that does come with the caveat of like I'm not paying myself, so that is not a factor when I'm calculating costs.
Yeah. So, in case you haven't figured it out by now, this may be a very financial centered episode. We're not going to talk about your 401ks or your IRAs or stuff like that, but more so, cosplay can teach you a lot of things to possibly use in your own personal life, and budgeting is one of them. Specifically, I know in the case for me, when it came to making my outfits, that usually would We'd start by gathering a lot of reference pictures, reference materials of the character in question. If you wanted to create your own design, like either like a Gijinka or like steampunk, transform the character. Maybe you would draw it out. You don't really need to have an artistic side of you to like fully bring it to life, as long as you can like map out what you'd want it to look like, and then it just comes down to I know I would like label certain things of like, okay, I need to get this, I need to get that, I need to get these materials. I would say that compared to like the last couple of years, I'll even say like within the last 10 years of cosplay as a hobby now growing to this like massive, still expanding industry, I feel like materials are a lot more easier to obtain, especially when you have like individuals like Yaya Han with her fabric line being populated at various Joanne fabric stores, or people like SKS Props with his HD foam also at craft stores.
Yeah,
They're
you can get EVA foam and Warbler at like Joann's and Michael's now.
which is weird because back in my day, I had to go to cosplaysupplies.com and it would
Right,
be
and cosplaysupplies.com is still a fabulous place to get
oh, absolutely.
bulk amounts of what you need. So I still go to cosplaysupplies.com just because for the amount of Warbler and the specialty Warblers that I need, yeah, it makes sense. Or like I'll go to TNT Cosplay because I need a specific amount in a specific thickness of a specific kind of EVA foam. But being able to go to Michael's or Joann's, just like pop in and get large generic sheets of craft foam is fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's replaced what we used to do, which was go into your local hardware store and buy the puzzle mat foam that always came with the unusable side.
Yeah. I think I still have my leftovers somewhere in my basement in my cosplay supplies bag of leftover fabric.
Well, that used to be the gold standard, is we would have to use that giant thick floor mat foam, and if we were lucky, it wasn't the textured side wasn't terribly deep so that you could maybe sand it off.
Oh yeah, easily remove it.
It was that, or like you'd have to go get the sheets of craft foam, and they never came in very large pieces, so you were like, okay, I guess this is what I get now.
Yeah, I know one time I bought like this I remember it was for my Aquaman outfit because he had an armor chest piece, and then I wanted to make dozens upon dozens of little triangles for the scales in his like armor chest piece. And I remember I got like a bundle of like I think 50 or 100 those like normal regular sized craft foam sheets in a box, and I feel like I didn't even break a dent into that amount, like in making like all the triangles for the armor sheet. Like I still have a good chunk still sitting around in my cosplay supplies bag.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah. I mean, like I still have like a lot of tracing paper left over, mainly for some of the patterns that I've used. Because I mean, you never know. I mean, cosplay or not, maybe I'll need craft foam for this project or that project, or maybe I do want to get back into making outfits, and I at least have a solid amount to work with instead of spending who knows how much money you'd have to spend.
Well, let me tell you, cosplay is definitely a hobby that encourages hoarding. And I say this because I've been able to make costumes during lockdown because I've hoarded stuff. Like I've got zippers and more thread than is probably reasonable. But like it really does benefit to have a weird hoard supply of your stuff.
Yeah. I still have all a good, I think, either close to or the full amount of all the paint I've collected over the years, all the colors, all the various shades. Like I still have my art kit from like back in college that I used, like a bunch of brushes that I've never even touched before. Like I got like a bundle or like, yeah, I think it was like a bundle or a pack of like sponge brushes to use for some painting. So like I still have a ton of that. Um yeah, I feel that if you want to make a cosplay, it's never not what am I saying? It's not a bad thing to start small, of course. Like everyone started small. They came from somewhere before building these gigantic, like diva mech suit, or you got the guy that did like the Bumblebee Transformers outfit or the Hulk Buster, but everyone's got to start somewhere, and like one of the best things you can do for yourself is either or definitely just like make a list of things that you need to make after you like labeled out your design, and then just factor in how much you think it could cost, maybe by doing like some online research on like Amazon or stuff before you could try to figure out like, okay, I could get this at the store, I could go run to the store and get this and that. I know for a time, um I don't know if it's still widely used. I think it is. There was the Cosplayer app.
Oh yeah, I downloaded it, and the Cosplaying app is good if you intend to work in small chunks and you intend to like keep yourself organized. It's challenging because ahead of time you have to kind of assign weight to all of the items that you are doing. Otherwise, get the wig might occupy the same 5% of a costume as sew the costume. So like that part, I just remember being like, oh, that doesn't really help me as far as like actually making me feel like I've made progress.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, what you need to do prior to making any costume is to do what's called micro uniting. And that's where you take a lofty task, whatever it is, and you break it down into a series of smaller tasks. And so the reason why you would micro unit, like what you need to make the costume happen, like what are the essential components of this costume, is so that you as like a person who has to execute this can handle the mental gymnastics that are required to make a costume. Because looking at something as a full finished product is very overwhelming, and it's really hard for an individual to see what the completed look is going to be just by starting with a completed look. But if you break a costume down to like, here's what the top looks like, here's what the bottom looks like, this is what needs to happen for the footwear, this is what needs to happen for the wig wear, like if you break it down into manageable pieces, then you can more easily analyze what you need for those manageable pieces. And it's less likely that you're going to be overwhelmed, and it's less likely that you're going to forget to order something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If I could think of an example, we could easily go with my chest piece for the Aquaman Featured End cosplay that I did. So that entailed mainly, if we were to go into specifics, we could look at his armor plating. So like classic Aquaman, he'd got the orange shirt with all the gold sheen and the scales, but this interesting design had the chest piece like cut up in like a triangular shape. So like, what did I do first? Like, I grabbed as many pictures as I could of the outfit, and then I tried to map out or like trace and pattern the armor itself, in addition to taking into account um my own like chest size, to figure out like how long would I need this to be. And then when I've got all those measurements taken out, then I would transfer the pattern onto like the foam, and then I would cut out maybe like one sample piece, and then I would do another piece and then stick them together, not permanently, but just to figure out would I want it to be this thick, would I want it to be even thicker. So I would make that adjustment, create however many more base foam pieces I would need for like my front, my back, and then the two shoulder pieces, which could be a little bit difficult depending on how it's all shaped out. And then, I'd get that done. I would fuse them together, so to speak. And then I would go into the scales part where I would just like zoom in on the picture, figure out the shape of the scale, and then just duplicate that for as much as I would need, and then cut it out, try to fill in the whole armor plate. And then once that was all done, I'd like glue it all on. And then definitely the challenging part after that would be to heat form the foam to my actual shape. Oh, and not to mention like fitting it so that I could easily fit it over my head, and that it wouldn't be completely like almost like levitating off my body, like sort of sticking to like as close as it possibly could. And then once that was all done, then I just went to town on the paint, with the primer and the sealant, and then I used like a lot of orange paint, specifically with the spray paint, because that just got it done a lot more faster. And I would adjust it if needed in order for it to fit over my head, and then cover it up a little bit more in case the paint started to crack after I let it dry. And yeah, it's definitely a whole process.
Right, but it's made more manageable if you're able to like sort of chunk it and be like, all right, I'm going to accomplish this small part first.
Right. So
But that's kind of why when I make costumes, I usually start by making the accessories first. Just because those tend to be smaller projects and it gets me excited for making the rest of the costume.
Oh yeah. Yeah, in certain cases, like I know for Riku, I had bought mostly everything because thankfully I was able to find the outfit parts that I needed like online. It was mainly the Keyblade that proved the most challenging as the one thing that I had to make by myself, and that was the whole process. In like, okay, I got to get the right kind of wood. I gotta figure out how to trace the shape and get it to cut through the machine that I used. And then like once the shape was cut out, I then like drew on it like how the keyblade looks in these certain areas, almost like segmenting it off. And then I'd carve it out, go to town on the paint, and then like I would paint each segment multiple times a day, like down in the basement. I could definitely remember doing all that painting. It was something. What are your most memorable projects where you've done like the whole segmenting and like cutting it up into chunks and whatnot?
I think in recent memory, working on my Toothless cosplay from How to Train Your Dragon was a really great exercise in that.
Okay.
So that one has a lot of leather work to it. So something that I had done was I kind of sketched out, and I did a terrible job doing it. I sketched out the design of how I wanted it to look, and then I drew what I wanted each individual armor piece to look like, sort of as a standalone. So it was almost as if like I took my character art and then like redrew each piece of clothing that that character was going to wear by itself. And I referred to it as my technical drawing, but I didn't do a good job because I was just like rushing through the technical drawing part of it, but I didn't need it to be a work of 2D art, because the reality is I was going to put way more of my effort into making it 3D reality. So yeah, I drew these horrific 2D drawings that I like brought with me to the store where I was buying my leather from to make the leather armor. And it was just like, ignore the quality of the drawings, and we're just going to focus on what it actually looks like. But I was glad that I did that, because when I went to the store, then I had these technical drawings, so I could say, I need, 15 buckles. 3 of them have to be this size. 5 of them have to be this size. So like by drawing each piece out, I was able to then assign, well, how am I going to close it? What am I going to need for each piece?
Yeah.
So that when I go shopping, I can say, like, I need 15 buckles.
Yeah.
Because otherwise what happens is like the compulsion is to say, oh, I need a bunch of buttons. I need a bunch of zippers. But like, if you don't know how many you need, then you run the risk of not getting enough,
or buying too much.
Right. Buying too much is its own issue. I find that for a project, if you buy too much of something, then that's something that you could, like, the surplus can be used in future projects. If you're trying to save money, then buying too much is a bad thing. But if you are, intending to do this more, then buying too much is like, oh, well, I'll just use it for something in the future. But where I find most annoying is when I don't buy enough of something, usually with some sort of notion. If I don't buy enough, then at its most convenient, it means another trip to the store. But given that another trip to the store is just not feasible right now, like, not having enough of something is the difference between being able to start and finish the project like in a week versus having to wait another month for that something to come in the mail.
Yeah.
And that could be incredibly frustrating.
Or in a case where buying too much of something can act as sort of like an insurance in case you mess up in making what you want to make, and you don't have the opportunity, or I should say that you don't run the risk of now having to go out and buy something else again, spending even more money than you already had. Especially if you're going on a budget, yeah.
When I make anything, when I'm sewing, I usually will buy a little bit of extra fabric just in case something doesn't quite work out or I need to redo something, because as much as I want to believe that I get everything perfectly right on the first try, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And especially when it comes to buying fabrics, you run the risk of that fabric not being available 2 days from now, a week from now. Like, if you order your fabric online, to some degree, you have less of that problem getting your fabric at an actual like retail store, and to some degree ordering it online. If you're not getting what you need at the time that you get it, there's a chance that it will be sold out the next time you try to get more.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had that heartbreak before where I've gotten, well, it's close, but it's not the fabric I was using.
Oh, no.
And that's very frustrating too.
Yeah. And then another thing you could do to help offset the cost of your outfits, is to go full on extreme couponing, and take advantage of mainly like stores like Joann's and Michael's, and I guess maybe some hardware stores, but they'll have apps where they have daily coupons that are like always refreshed, or you could have the coupon mailed or more so emailed to your account, and just something to help you save a little more.
Well,
'Cause
the important thing to know about places like Joann's is that you shouldn't be buying fabric from Joann's at full retail price. The markup at Joann's is so significant that their business model is quite reliant on the fact that you're couponing. So if
yeah,
you find yourself at Joann's and you're not using a coupon, you really are now officially paying more than you should for that product. As I said, that's the reason why Joann's has so many coupons, is they know that the people who take the time to do that couponing and figure out which coupons can stack or try to stack them, those people are getting, they're paying closer to what they should be for that, for the worth of that fabric, as opposed to someone who's going and buying it without using any of their coupons. One
right.
thing that I will always tout is that there are lots of small businesses that sell products at more reasonable prices. This is particularly true for both hardware stores and for fabric stores. So
Okay.
I strongly suggest, when possible, supporting local businesses. Especially, I live in Massachusetts, and so one advantage that folks who live in Massachusetts have when it comes to fabric buying is that as long as your fabric is under $179 per yard and you are using it for clothing, that fabric will officially be categorized as apparel. And any apparel under $179 is tax exempt. If it's above
Oh,
$179, then it is considered a luxury item, in which case it's subject to luxury tax. But apparel fabrics are tax exempt in the state of Massachusetts. But if you
interesting.
buy apparel fabrics at Joann's, you still have to pay taxes, and they'll still charge you sales tax because the LLC of Joann's is not registered in Massachusetts, and I think it has something to do with like where they've registered the actual institution, that like the actual business of Joann's is
Huh.
how they calculate their sales tax. I'm not totally on the up and up of that. I am by no means studied on tax law or anything like that. But as I said, one thing that has saved me quite a lot over the years is the fact that shopping in Massachusetts, fabric that's being used for costumes is apparel. So I get to at least save on taxes.
Huh. Interesting tidbit.
Well, that's why it's helpful when, like, when the person who's cutting your fabric or the person who's at checkout asks you, "What are you working on?" If you're working on a costume, you should tell them, "I'm working on a costume," because that now changes the context that they are going to be charging you by.
Oh
Even if
wow.
like, well, there's one fabric store in particular that I go to where I'll be buying upholstery fabric, but it's because I'm using it for non-upholstery items. So even though the store categorizes it as upholstery, I'm still not charged tax because I'm not using it for curtains or a pillow or reupholstering. I'm using it for a costume. It's
Hint, hint,
apparel.
hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I mean, if you're going to do it, I recommend staying above board about it, because people are doing that out of the kindness of your heart. If you take advantage of it and you are a jerk about it, then they'll stop doing things out of the kindness of their heart.
Yeah,
So it's one of
true
those,
that.
like, don't ruin it for everyone. But this is something like, try not to abuse this, but it is something that if you're planning on making a costume, you should be mindful of.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I have to wonder if that's ever affected because I mean, I've never paid attention to stuff like that when I would just make my own outfit. I would just be like, yep, get the thing, use the coupon, pay this amount. Hopefully, it's not gonna kill me in the long run.
Well,
But
I used to be an exclusive shopper at Joann's. It really was the only game in town for me. And my couponing, therefore, was phenomenal. But it wasn't until I started going to, small businesses that I realized, like, oh, this is what the market price for certain types of fabric is. This is what I can kind of expect certain types of fabric to be. And as I started, like, as online shopping became more of a thing that everyone did, I got a sense of like, well, this is what you can expect linen to run for versus here's what a certain commercial site like Joann's might be selling it for. And then you can make the decision yourself. Is it worth it to have that access and the, amount of and the availability? Because sometimes the answer is yeah. I still go to Joann's almost exclusively for their fleece because they have such a robust line with such an amazing array of colors. And for the most part, I can get them on sale whenever I need to.
right, yeah, some stores will specialize in certain things that you can only get either at a good price or just like the convenience of it can help. So you're not like you've mentioned, like sitting on your hand waiting for stuff to show up, so that you can always keep that constant flow of work and creativity going when it comes
Right. Like,
to
do I
cosplay.
think that I could get a zipper, like a separating zipper, cheaper somewhere else? Yes. Do I live only 20 minutes away from a Joann's? Also, yes. And sometimes I'm going to pay full price for that darn zipper because it was only 20 minutes away.
Yeah. 20 minutes is better than waiting a couple of days.
Right. Or even driving 30 minutes to a local fabric store to save, like, at that point, it's like, is it worth the 10 extra minutes, but really 20 if you count the driving there and back? Is it worth the 20 extra minutes of my life to save $2?
Things cosplayers gotta decide upon.
Well, I mean, it's sad that this is the degree of like thinking about it that I'll put in, but like, hey, whatever justifies your terrible decisions, right?
I'll do it for the love of the craft. That's what we tell ourselves.
Well, I mean, I feel like, so my perspective is, of course, coming from someone who is a creator.
Right.
Obviously, things will be different if you are a cosplayer who commissions or buys your cosplay commercially. Like, things
Yeah.
will very, very obviously be different um, in that situation.
Right. Right. Hmm. Let me take a look. See. So we covered like craft stores, going to hardware stores, coupons, apps, creating material lists, budgeting for your outfits. And then as far as you had mentioned to me earlier, cosplaying on the cheap side, so to speak, if we're gonna use that language, how would you go about that?
Well, I mean, there are certainly things that you can do that require finesse but can be done. Like, you don't need to get the name brand thermoplastic to still have a thermoplastic. Like, you could theoretically use a milk jug and heat that up and work with it to give a thermoplastic effect. Do I recommend it? It's finicky and it's challenging, so it's not it's not the easiest material to work with. So that's one of those things where it's like, in lieu of uh in lieu of using something that's more universally able to be manipulated, you could just like straight up get good and use non-traditional materials. I have seen a lot of folks using paper mache instead of a thermoplastic to coat their props.
Huh.
And at the end of the day, it's like, well, it still creates a rigid shell. The disadvantage is that paper mache takes a while to dry
Yeah.
and it's messy,
Oh yeah.
but it's still cheaper because buying a tub of wood glue and some cast off newsprint is infinitely cheaper than buying a thermoplastic.
Yeah.
And you'll probably have to spend more time sanding it. That's the other component of
Of
it.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
But that to some people, that's their reality. That's their cosplay
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. It just reminds me of something that Yaya Han had said when it comes to like what's the one thing that you would recommend any newbie cosplayer to do if they want to start out in making their own outfits. And I remember she would always say, practice your Google foo. If you want to just look up like a bunch of DIY on how to make this, how to make that, because you're guaranteed to find something through Google, whether it's like instructions on a website to make this, or you could watch dozens upon dozens of YouTube videos on how tos. Yeah, practicing your Google foo. That's what I would say.
But it's true, and there are great analogs to expensive materials. So if you don't want to use leather because of its expense or because of your own feelings about the use of such a material, there are analogs that you could use that are substantially cheaper. And I think one of my favorites that I've heard of is using EVA foam that you heat and press tinfoil into.
Oh,
Because crinkled up tinfoil that's been heated and pressed into heated foam creates that almost leather-like texture that you would get on a garment leather.
interesting.
It's very cool to try. So you would superheat your foam and just kind of roll crumpled up leather into it. Like don't expect that you can or crumpled up tinfoil into it. Like don't expect that you could just lay down a sheet of tinfoil and automatically get something. You have to really like work it in. But it
Right,
gives a
right.
really neat textural effect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or using stuff like googly eyes to make like rounded circles, or it, I think divots is the right word. Rounded divots for certain armor pieces. Like I know that's what I had to do with my Wolf Gijinka from Smash Brothers.
Oh, you're talking about the rivet technique with the googly eyes?
Yeah, not divot, rivet. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
rivet.
yeah,
Well, using googly eyes as rivets is both cheap and also consistent. Because I have seen folks who are like, well, I'll just cut my own rivets and I'll round them off and that'll be great. And it works fabulously, and that is one way that you can do it. But if you need to be OCD about your rivets all looking the same size and shape, then googly eyes comes in a variety of sizes. And as long as you use the same sized googly eye, then you'll be able to get that consistent rivet look.
yeah, yeah.
And very cheaply too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think again in my little cosplay supply bag, I think I still have like a dozen or so googly eyed left over, because like I used no, like I feel like at least 10 or less than 10 like for my wolf cosplay. Um, Yeah. The things. Oh my gosh. I'll still sometimes get complaints from my mom. Like, are you ever gonna wear this again? Like, I'll hang on to it. Either I'll wear it again or I'll repurpose it for something else.
I feel like my answer is usually nope.
No, never. I don't have a
One
problem.
time.
One time. Oh man. Anything else you want to add for those wanting to learn about budgeting for their outfits or
I
wanting
think the
to?
most important thing to keep in mind is to not spend more than you are taking in or making. So if you really only have $100, don't spend $100 on just your wig. Because then you have no money for anything else, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're like, well, I'll just eat ramen for the rest of the week so I can afford this. Like,
Oh
if
no.
you can't afford the costume in the way that you want it to be made, say you want $100 wig and $300 fabric, but you're running on a budget of like $150, like obviously you can't make that costume the way that you wanted to at that moment. So you really have two options. You can save and then make that costume later, or compromise and use a less expensive material component to achieve the same effect. But you
Right.
shouldn't be in a position where you are replacing basic necessities with cosplay. Cosplay is a great hobby and it's really fun, but like asking your friends for money so that you can have pizza because you spent your pizza money on uh cosplay would be like a big no
Not a
no.
no
And I
no.
come up with this example off the top of my head because a couple years ago a friend of mine was telling me that he was dating a girl that had done this to him and he ordered her a pizza. But like when I thought about it, like for any measure of seconds, I'm like, wait a minute. If your cosplay money precludes you from having pizza money, then something has gone horribly wrong.
Oh no. Yeah. Yeah. On that note, like Mink said, cosplay is a hobby. It's awesome. It allows you a lot of creativity and a lot of freedom, like how you want to make your own outfits, but it should never, ever, 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 ASMR in there, take priority over real life necessities. That's the key takeaway.
Right. And it's not like it shouldn't be like, oh, I can't have fun things because I have to pay my rent. Like, hopefully, you're in a position where you can pay your rent and still have fun things. But it might just mean that until you're able to be in a position where you can cosplay more regularly, if you are finding that you're unable to cosplay and also comfortably pay rent or, pay car loans or whatnot, maybe take a break from making new cosplay, or maybe just focus on the one and you save up for it instead of trying to come up with like multiple different costumes, like a new costume for every day of every convention that you're going to for the next like year and a half, like
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I know that there's a societal pressure to constantly try to be creating new things, or showing up to a convention in a new cosplay. Like I get that,
Oh yeah.
but nothing should be more important than making sure your basic human needs are met.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with re-wearing an outfit several times while you're either saving up money to start your next outfit or you're slowly chipping away at one outfit and you're not in a rush to get it out. Like I've done that countless times with my Prompto outfit, and I feel like I could wear him for the rest of my life until the stuff doesn't fit me anymore, of course. But yeah, like, and if people do have a problem with you re-wearing the stuff, like the same outfit and not being able to come up with new things, that's on them, not you. So like also keep that in mind. Well, with that sort of brief silent pause, I think this might be a solid place to wrap it up. I mean, I would mention closet cosplays. Those are also a thing that a lot of people do. I don't know. That could be an episode in itself, or tagged on to another topic. But for now, I guess we will leave it at that. If you guys wouldn't mind reviewing the show, giving it a rating if you want, if you really like it, means a lot. You can find me at my patreon.com/Lightning Palace, where it's free to view, but I'll give you stickers and other cool things if you feel so inclined as to pledge. Along with my Lightning Palace blog and my Twitter and Instagram accounts, of course. Mink, if they want to go find your work, where do they go?
Well, you can find me at Mink the Satyr on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are my big places to go. If you're interested in becoming a patron, you can also find me on Patreon. And on Thursday nights, I stream art and sometimes video gaming, which you can also find by going to Twitch. I'm Mink the Satyr.
All right, and with that, also there's also a we keep forgetting there's a Facebook page for the show, facebook.com/cosplaybites, where you can also view when the episodes go live publicly. But in the end of all things, or I'm fumbling the ending. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode, and please stay tuned for more exciting topics. I got a whole table of exciting guests that are being planned, and I'm excited to share them with you. So take care, be safe, wash your hands, yada, 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 and I will see you all in the next episode. Take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a review and feedback. You can also support the show through Anchor's listener support or on my Patreon, patreon.com/Lightning Palace. For more cosplay news and coverage, visit the Lightning Palace on Blogspot and follow Lightning Palace on Twitter and Instagram. See you all next time.